And I kind of went, can I be monogamous? And I was like, no.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So after the cheating, you was like, oh, I don't want to make anyone feel like this again.
So I from that day forward, I said I'm never getting into a monogamous relationship. So if I'm in a relationship, it's like, you know, I don't like the term open because it suggests something that it isn't. But yeah.
Poly. Just poly.
Yeah, I suppose that's what
That's what we call it
got
these
a label
days.
now.
Yeah. Calling it polyamorous these days.
Hello. Hi guys, and welcome to 144 of the Two Twos podcast. I am Nana.
And I'm Ro.
And together we are Two Twos. So we have a special guest in the building today. Please introduce yourself, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. My name's Paul Atherton. I'm a filmmaker, playwright, author, but mainly a social campaigner. I specialize in taking challenging subjects and trying to change the public's opinion on them.
What's the most challenging one?
At the moment is getting people to be nice to each other.
Oh wow. That's such a simple one as well, but it's you would be surprised.
Well, I think we've created a new generation of me's.
Yeah.
Everything's me. Everything's about me, how I'm going to live my life and what my life's going to be. And we've stopped being a society because of it. And I think the internet's part of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that social media has anything to do with that?
Oh, social media's got everything to do.
Yeah.
I think we were talking a couple of weeks ago. I'm a fellow at the Royal Society of Arts, and I've written a blog called You're Living in the 21st Century, but you probably didn't notice. And it's trying to explain that the world we live in today isn't remotely like the world we lived in 10 years ago, and nothing at all like the world we lived in 2 decades ago, 20 years ago. Everything's different. Money's different. Economics is different. Politics is different. Relationships are different. Sex is different. I mean, it's just like there is nothing similar.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're a generation, which you'd be the first millennials were the first generation, or late millennials, who grew up with no changes in their life. First time ever in history. They were already embedded into IT. They were already embedded into social media. They were already embedded. And you were like going...
Would that have been us?
Well, we grew up in that time because we're early 90s, but like those late 90s.
Yeah,
definitely.
They had a social media going on,
because I remember getting a computer. I remember getting the dial-up internet, but some people just born into, you know.
We're older than you look.
I know, yeah, we are older than we look. But do you know what I mean? So there were some people like in the late 90s that were born in the late 90s that actually grew up with all of that already like there, and it wasn't anything that was new to them, which is really, really interesting. Yeah. Is that why you don't have a phone?
There are many reasons I don't have a phone. The biggest one is I had one. I don't use banks. And so I used to just pay for... I'd go into an O2 store, I have an O2 phone, I just go... And then they went, no. Where you must have a bank account now, even if it's a pay-as-you-go phone.
Yeah,
I'm like, hell no. And then it just got complicated, and I started using email, which is but because I live online, I'm usually writing or doing something. It's like I use email like most people use text messages.
Yeah,
I see.
So if you do use text, or that's the other thing. Everybody's got a different way of messaging.
Yeah.
Like, I only do it. I only use Facebook Messenger. I only use WhatsApp. And I'm like, oh,
it's
complicated. So why don't you use banks?
That's so interesting.
Oh, that's a big one. All right. In 2009, I was living in what would be considered now a luxury apartment, but at the time it was dirt cheap, in the White House just behind the Royal Festival Hall. So we had a swimming pool in our basement, terrace overlooking the London Eye, views over.
Definitely luxury,
But it costs us £800 each a month.
Wow. Not now. Okay. Definitely not now.
And I came to renew my tenancy, and I just did some due diligence and checked my credit file. And there was this debt on my credit file. It wasn't mine. And I kind of went, I know what this debt is, because they'd investigated and proved it wasn't mine 4 years earlier. So I went back to Experian and Equifax, the two credit agencies. Yeah. Like, you bunged this stupid debt on, which you know isn't mine, on my credit file. And took me from a gold-plated score to a don't ever give this guy any money ever. It's about 60,000 or 70,000 or something.
Wow.
And
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
so I was kind of going, just get it off because I can't rent until you take this off.
Yeah.
And both Experian and Equifax went, no. I was
I'm so confused. There was an investigation. They proved that it wasn't your debt, but the credit companies refused to take it off.
Yeah, and the response to this was, we will only take it off when the debt collection agency tells us to.
Oh my.
Wow. But they all thrive off debt. They thrive off debt.
So I then got in touch with the ombudsman, financial ombudsman, and they said, it'll take us 28 days to sort this out, Paul. And I'm like, fine.
Did you have 20 days to spare?
I did, just.
Okay.
But it took them a year and a half to sort it
Wow.
out.
Wow.
By which time I'd lost my house.
Yeah.
And became homeless, which is I have been ever since. So that's 14 years now.
Wow.
And at that point, I was like, I have no protections against it. I can't. The credit agencies aren't liable because all they are is a portal of information.
Yeah.
The debt collections are just money-making machines that sell debt and sell debt and sell debt. And every time they do that, they apportion it to everybody with the same name and roughly the same date of birth, right? Which is illegal. It's totally criminal.
Yeah.
But the financial ombudsman wrote to me saying, we do not have any legal teeth to do anything about it. So I couldn't sue anybody. And suddenly my life's been taken away from me. So I was like, yeah, I'm done with the banks.
Right.
That's crazy. Do you know, one thing I didn't realize is credit scores haven't always been a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that until maybe like last year.
That's our fault.
What happened with that? Why?
Because banks are idiots and greedy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what actually happened was the banks came up with this idea that it started with a check guarantee card.
Yeah.
So you used to write checks.
Yeah.
Right. So credit card
Just
used
about
to
remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
and they said, right, here's a £50 check guarantee card, right? And we all went, wait a minute. We have 25 checks and every one of those checks now is guaranteed at 50 quid. So I can write all of them knowing that they'll all be covered, even if I haven't got a penny in my bank account. Right? So that was the start. Then some bright spark came up with the store card.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you go into store and you go, have a credit card that's only linked, you can only spend in our store. But we'll give you that on the spot if you've got a check guarantee card. So we were like going, we went to Dixon's, 300 quid, went to Habitat, 300 quid. And then we spent the money. And then the banks at 20 years old. And then the banks came and went,
Where's the money?
you didn't give me money.
Yeah.
And I went, what do you mean? You give me a bit of plastic. That's not money. And they went, well, we want it back. And they went, we can't get it back. And then they realized that if they can't share information, we can just keep doing this ad nauseam.
Yeah.
That was the birth of the credit agency.
I see.
Even store cards. I remember store cards.
Yeah.
They don't have store cards anymore, do they?
It's not in the way that they did. I mean, I used to love them. I had a Harrods one and
Yeah.
Wow.
Love them, yeah.
yeah.
All the expensive ones.
But the reason I had them is the perks you got off them, and you didn't pay any money for it.
Yeah.
Right? So you'd apply for it, and because you had it, you get free parking in Harrods. That's
okay.
weekend.
Yeah.
You get your car wash free in Selfridges. You just having the card.
The card,
So
yeah.
you never spent any money. You just got the card. Got all.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
That is a really good idea. But I guess the whole credit thing is just about trust. They don't trust you if they feel like you can't pay the money back and
Well, they
all of
know
that
you
stuff.
can't pay the money back.
Yeah.
Right. So don't ever forget that the key things to sort of credit reference, the whole credit system. If you take borrowing and pay off all your borrowing, you're a poor credit risk, right? Nobody wants you because you don't make anybody money.
Yeah.
So what they
keep
want
taking.
you is they want you literally on the edge all the time. So you're constantly borrowing, you're constantly getting charged, you're constantly getting interest.
Yeah.
So the whole system's set up that way to the point that we've now put you into debt as soon as you go to university.
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have a 60 grand's worth of debt and show
Yeah.
nothing to show for it at the end of 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think these days a lot of people are not actually using their degrees anyway. They're going into careers that have nothing to do with whatever they studied. I feel like these days uni is more of an experience.
Yeah.
These days. Depending on what you're studying. If you're studying to be a doctor, anything that's
Yeah, I think if they are absolutely essential to whatever you're doing,
yeah.
But the problem with universities now is that they're money-making operations.
Yeah, it's absolutely
They're
true.
not there to teach you anything. So when I went to university, 3% of the population went to university, right? My brothers got paid to go, in essence. They got benefits the whole time they were there. They got a maintenance grant. They got their fees paid, and they could claim benefits.
It made sense to go because you're going to get money anyway.
Well, yeah, but we had these tiered education systems, right?
Yeah.
So you had universities at the top, then you had polytechnics, and you had colleges of further education, then you had and apprenticeships, and it was a tiered system, and every tier did something very different.
Right.
So I did a business degree at Cardiff Business School. And my friend said, "Oh, so you can do business?" And I giggled.
No.
I did a degree.
Yeah.
So I came up with the models that the polytechnics would apply that would pass down to the managers who do stuff, you know. And, you know, one of my best grades was to prove that the course I was studying, marketing, couldn't exist. So Michael Kotler, who's considered the godfather of marketing, said, "Oh, it's discovering the needs of the wants and consumer." And I said, "Well, we know people's needs because you know, warm, shelter, water, food, but we create their wants. We don't discover their wants. We manufacture their wants. So by definition, if marketing is discovering people's wants, we can't. Therefore, it doesn't exist."
That is interesting. So when you went to uni, you studied business?
Yeah, put my hands up on this one.
What happened? Like, because you can do something completely different. I mean, you have a business, you have your production company, but still, that's not what you were probably going in there for, was it?
No. In truth, I went to university so my mother could go to one of her son's graduations.
Oh,
Both my elder brothers, Andrew and Richard. So Richard did architecture, and Andrew did dentistry in Bristol. And they both didn't want to go to their graduations. My mum always felt she'd missed out. So I didn't go from school. I'd left school when I was 16. I went when I was 22 as a mature student. I went through an access course to do it because I hadn't done my A-level.
Yeah.
And I just bought my first house. I was like, and Cardiff Business School was the closest one to where I live.
Right. It was convenience. Yeah. It was convenience.
You know, when I originally started doing A levels, I'd done it in biology, chemistry, and English because I was useless at physics. So it was kind of, we were always taught to give you your best options, do 3 sciences.
Yeah.
If you do 3 sciences, every course on anything will take you.
Right.
If it's law, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
3 sciences will take. And I was just useless at physics, so I kind of I'll take an art subject. So I did English. But I didn't finish school. And so when I went back to do my access course, I did it in statistics, quantitative statistics, economics, and financial management. So it was kind of it was a natural.
Yeah.
It's been hand in hand.
Natural
What's it like
progression.
growing up in Wales then?
Especially at the time.
Yeah.
Because I know it's
That
fucked.
time.
It's still fucked up now, but like.
Well, see, Wales is a really strange place. Most people don't realize Wales was only made a country in 2012, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, and
Really?
that was only because of the Olympics.
Oh, I did not.
That's
know
very
that.
interesting.
Okay.
Do we have a prince?
No.
Yeah, we do. We have a Prince of Wales.
But like an actual Prince of Wales in Wales?
No, but the role of the Prince
Yeah.
of Wales was Prince Charles.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I was like, not an actual
Prince of
prince.
Wales.
Which
Yeah.
makes us a principality, not a country. That's where the name comes from, right?
Yeah.
So Wales got really shirty.
They were angry about that, weren't they? Because
they often get angry.
yeah.
We're not happy. There's
Yeah,
a million of us.
they-
We're really pissed off. There are more people in Peckham. Yeah. But it's a really strange place, Wales, because most of the people in Wales don't like each other. So you've got the North Walians who are proper Welsh, who absolutely despise the South Walians. So if I go to North Wales and they pick up a twinge of a Welsh accent, they will immediately speak rural Welsh, which is totally different to the Welsh we speak in South Wales.
Right.
And they'll refuse to speak English. English person comes in, they'll happily speak English all day. But
See.
it's like, well, you're Welsh, you should know our language. You know,
Yeah.
it's that kind of thing. But then every segment of Wales is like that. So the Rhymney Valley hate the Rhondda Valley. The Ely hates Fairwater. You know, and there were riots between these two areas.
Yep.
You know, and basically it's anything that puts a boundary around us that we can fight about. And that was kind of. But I grew up in a Welsh mining community.
Okay.
So it was a population of 3,500, 4,000. And most people were children of miners. You know, so their father's life expectancy was around 42. You know, their parents had worked at the pit since they were 6 or 7 years old. You know, we were kind of the first generation that were certainly. Yeah, I suppose there was about 20 of us that went to university in my year. But it was the first sort of. We were becoming less rural,
right? More city,
and that was the start. But yeah, it was a strange. You know, Lenny Henry talks about a lot of the experiences I had, and one of my favorite ones is when you go around to people's houses and they offer you bananas, and right, it really does sound right, but it isn't.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's somebody trying to be nice but not knowing anything.
Right.
So they're kind of going, oh, well, you must like bananas because of the color of your skin, and you're like,
right.
Oh wow,
I like ice cream and chips more.
Yep.
But these weren't cheap, right? They weren't easy to get hold of. It wasn't like, you know, most of our produce came from the farms that were around, right? So we didn't. The big supermarket that came into Wales was Carrefour, which was a French. That was miles away from where we live. So if you were going to get banana, that's where you were going, and it was a drive away.
Right.
You had to go, you know. So it was a big deal having this, which, you know. But yeah, Lenny always used to say is that everywhere you go, oh, I got bananas.
Yeah.
Like, just chips.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
Yeah, that's
Keep
really
it simple. So what was it like being brown in that community as well?
Swings and roundabouts. I mean, I was incredibly fortuitous. I had a real growth spurt when I was quite young, which meant that I was taller than everybody else, so I could beat anybody up. So that, you know, anybody
That helps.
of course.
Yeah.
But it was the parents that were the worst. I mean, kids are just mean, right?
Yeah.
So when you get called any epithets in the schoolyard, they are just that, right? They're just name calling. But I remember the parents going, you know, don't get any a little nignog, you know, you'll catch things, and you kind of go. I remember going home. Important bit. I was fostered, so my family was white.
Yeah.
My foster family was white. And so my mother had this really interesting approach to everything. She goes, you're never going to meet an intelligent racist. You're bright. Don't worry about it.
That's an interesting way of you know.
Well, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but it's also like, you know, I don't hear that a lot. Do you know what I mean? I don't hear that a lot, and that was kind of maybe to just set you up a bit better, because, you know, in comparison, you wouldn't really hear that, you know. So I think that was a very smart thing to do.
Yeah, I got involved some years ago on Channel 4. There was a debate about white parents adopting black kids. And I had a big sort of proper afro when I was a kid. And they were saying, oh, you know, white parents don't know how to look after black hair. It's like, my mother had coconut oil. If I had kids with hair like that, I wouldn't have known to have coconut.
Yeah.
And this was pre-internet, you know. So like something you could have just looked.
She really made an effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, she knew stuff. To this day, I still don't know how she knew.
How she knew that? Yeah. Were you the only fostered child
In her family?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is kind of interesting. So, my foster family, so whenever I talk about my family, it's my foster family. So they took me when I was 3 months old. My biological mother was also white, as was my biological father. So I'm a throwback on my father's side, 5 generations back west.
No way. No way.
So that was kind of a fun time. It's like, that's not the right color.
Right.
So she was living with my father with his mother. So when I came, she got thrown out. Went to social services. So, you know, she was 19 going on 12, going, I can't cope. Social services at the time said, child's always better off with his mother, doesn't matter what happens. So she was put on a campsite in an abandoned airport, which is for a bunch of single mothers,
Wow.
destitute single mothers. And one of her friends said, oh, if you leave him, they'll have to take him into care. So that's what she did. But she didn't bother telling anybody. So I was stuck in a tent for about 7 hours.
Oh, no.
Death's door until she picked me up. But here was the blinder. And this is something I didn't find out until very, very recently. My social worker was a guy called Tony Austin. And he'd named his son after me. And I didn't know why that was for a wee while, but then I discovered it was because I was his first case. And so my mother was under his care. He found me, and instead of putting me in the system, he took me home. And looked after me until he found the right family for me.
That's so sweet.
Yes. But I only found that out a few years ago at his 50th wedding anniversary, because the local press did a story about us, still being in touch after all. This kind of thing. And they interviewed him, and it came out in the newspaper. I didn't know anything about it.
And that's when you found out. That's hilarious.
Wow, that's crazy. Imagine how that.
But he was black.
Today.
I think he was the only black social worker.
I think probably that's why. Yeah, that's probably why. He probably was definitely the only black one. In that time, during that time. Wow. So what was it like for the queers out there? Do you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was interesting because I mean, I went to an all boys school, so obviously up until I was 15, I suppose 14, 15, I only knew. I'm never quite sure the terms. Now, are we still calling homosexuals gays or so male homosexuals. So it was. I didn't really encounter much lesbians until I was in Cardiff. But gay people in South Wales were ridiculed in a way that you'd expect.
Yeah.
And vilified in the way you'd expect. It was a crazy machismo, especially where, in mining communities. It's crazily machismo, right? It's like, we play, we always joke that when we were growing up, it was kind of like, football's for girls. And then girls win the World Cup. And they told you. But it was that machismo. And so nobody came out. But I had lots of friends who I knew were gay, who I went to school with.
Is it because they told you, or you just
they told you? Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of you have little trust circles, right?
Yeah.
And I was in a lot of those. But when I came to Cardiff, that is literally the gay capital of the world.
Yeah.
And people don't realise it. The greatest gay collection in terms of museum collection is in central Cardiff.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And I got heavily into the scene when I was about 16, 17.
Yeah.
Was that from like friends, from being friends with?
Yeah, well, mainly after I just turned 18, so 16, I started having sort of gay relationships, and that came through work mainly. And occasionally, some guy I met at a bar. But when I turned 18, I worked in pubs, and then I worked with a couple of gay guys, and then they kind of took me around, and it was just like, this is awesome. Everybody go with kings and everything. The dance floor lights come on. We have lasers painting our names on the wall. I do miss that.
It's always fun partying with the gays.
Yes. So let's get into like your journey with your sexuality as well. So let's talk about from then till now. So where you arrive now.
Wow. That's a ride. I think you've got to contextualize it in the fact that I grew up in a world where your objective as a human being was to get someone pregnant, get settled down, have children, and procreate. Right? That was it. So I grew up in a small Welsh mining town where the drive was to get married as quickly as possible.
So everyone getting married at quite young ages.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you weren't married by the time you were 21, there was something wrong.
Right.
Oh, okay.
If you weren't on your first kid by the time you were 21, but again, don't forget that life expectancy, right? So they,
Oh yeah, because by in their 40s. Yeah.
So the thinking was just totally different.
Yeah.
And it's working class, right? I mean, I had this weird sort of family dynamic where my father, who is emphatically middle class, would insist he's working class. My mother, who was emphatically working class, would insist she's middle. And I kind of grew up in this really interesting household where my dad goes, well, we're not middle class. And I'm like, Dad, we've got 3 cars, 1 motorcycle, an acre of land in a semi-detached house in a village where most of my friends don't have indoor toilets. Trust me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that is definitely. Yeah.
I work for a living. He goes, what do you do, Dad? Well, I'm the lingerie buyer for the cooperative service for Britain. I'm like,
Middle class.
Not. In a mining village. Yeah, but that's how we saw things. So he came from a generation which was you only have sex to procreate, right? My mother had an affair, which is why they ended up splitting up. But she was far more sexual. Not that she ever expressed this at all.
Yeah.
You know, we had that classic sort of. And there was a bigger generation gap between my parents and me and my friends' parents and them.
Okay.
Because they were foster parents.
Yeah,
So they were almost my friend's grandparents.
Right.
So they were coming from all, not Victorian, but sort of post-war babies and that sort of oppressive kind of thing.
Yep.
They were not 60s children or 60s, not 50s children growing up in the 60s and that sort of free love thing. But even the people I knew there kind of done that bit and then had moved on.
Right.
And kind of, you spread your wild oats.
Yeah.
Then you settle down. So I think by the time I was growing up, so there was a lot going on when I was growing up sexually. I think the big thing was the fact that it was absolutely everywhere. So I was a newspaper boy at sort of 12. Because, how else do you get your beer? You've got to go and get some money to get your beer and your cigarette.
At 12.
Oh, yeah. Valleys. Nothing else to do. Smoke and drink and take that's it. And have sex. But yeah, so there was this really... There was a revolution coming on. So there were things like The Joy of Sex had come out. And then literally when I was about 12 or 13, The More Joy of Sex had just come out. Marshall and Cavendish had produced a publication called Man and Woman, which was basically how to have great sex and great relationships. And this was suddenly on the middle shelf, so you got the porn at the top.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it wasn't wrapped in those days. It became wrapped later on. But it was, on the top shelf out of hand's reach. But actually Man and Woman was considered educational. So as much as it had lots of naked pictures of naked men and women having sex, it was like, oh, this is education. So by the time I was about 11, I was ready to have sex. I'd read every book on attraction, psychology, and it was like, wow, I'm ready now. But in all honesty, that came about because one of my friends said they'd had sex.
Right.
Oh, yes.
And they were bragging about it.
Of course.
And I was like, well, I'm going to have to counter that. So I thought, well, I'm not doing it blindly. So that's why I started reading. I didn't realize
get the research first.
Yeah.
I thought you put your ass. Which old put it in that. So it was one of those moments where it was kind of like, by the time I finished reading, I was like, no, he was lying.
That's how it was.
Ready to go. So we just struck this really strange dynamic. It wasn't strange at the time. It was like I was saying to you at the tortoise thing.
Yeah.
It was completely and utterly normal to us, and we thought everybody was doing the same thing. So it was a group of 8 of us, and we were 4 couples basically. And we started swapping and we started interchanging and we started doing stuff group and all of this was kind of exploratory and it was some of it was taken from the stuff we'd read, some of it was just pure
nature.
Curiosity.
But it was fun and it was exciting and it was great. But I still had that thing on my shoulder going, when are you going to settle down? So you're my first I could argue my first proper girlfriend was when I was 10. And I said to her mother, I'm in love with your daughter. And she goes, you're 10 years old. What do you know about love? And I remember being at a wedding 20 years later. And she goes, you're still in love with my daughter. Told you. Didn't have sex with her 20 years later. But yeah, so it was a catalogue of long-term relationship. So from 12... I went, 12 to 15, 16, one girl, another girl 16 to 18, and then 19 was one girl until I was 26.
Wow.
With a couple overlapping.
That means,
as you do.
Well, there was one point where I was dating 3 women. I was living with one, dating another one, and having an affair with another.
What was the affair on? That's
right. So this is where things get really confusing.
Yeah.
So one of these women became the mother of my son. The woman I lived with was living in the house that I bought.
Okay.
And I literally just gave her the house when I left. And the affair I was having was a woman I met on my access course. Everybody knew there was one other.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Nobody knew there was 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So when it all came out, everybody was like, I'm really pissed off about it, but I knew you were cheating on me.
Yeah, I was 2. Yeah. I remember when we did the panel, you were saying about contraception. You were saying that how that you and I think you said you were on when you were quite young. 12. So let's talk about that as well, because I feel like these days when they get to school, they learn about contraception and stuff like that. But like, I don't know if they really know where to even get this stuff from at this age.
It is interesting, isn't it? It's like I think again, it's one of those problems where you basically become overswamped with information. So at this time, there was a rise in teenage pregnancy. And so there was a push by the government. Right. And so we were getting lots and lots and lots of information. Doctors had been told that they were allowed to give contraception to teenagers without notifying parents. So there was a whole bundle of things going to address a social problem.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the context. But again, it was one of those things, you know. I mean, you get one scare. It's all it takes you is one scare when she's late, and you're like going, "Oh shit, I'm 12. I can't have a child."
Yeah. That is so. But what do you think about that now? Like in these times, because obviously back then it was a little different. What do you think about it in these times? Like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, you know, having sexual intercourse, and you know.
I think that the problem comes back to the internet, right? I think, like I was saying, we got all of our sexual information came from reading. Yeah. It always contextualized, and it was always driven by trust, communication, and sex was not the end goal. It was part of a bigger goal. Whereas if you grew up now when you were watching Pornhub or something, the sex that you're watching is usually violent. Yeah. And if you're not getting a proper education from anywhere else, that becomes the sole sort of input into your world. Yep. And it just shifts your view about it. So, I mean, I was hearing somebody saying that, 12-year-old girls were sort of worrying about being able to perform anal sex. And you're like going,
at 12.
Yeah. That shouldn't be on anybody's agenda at 12. It's like... But again, it was that notion of pressure. It's like every girl suddenly became prepubescent with the rise of Pornhub because all the porn stars had shaved their pubes, and we were like, what the hell's going on? That's all look like 9-year-old girls. This is weird, man. So that had a way bigger influence than I think people have ever given it credit for. But I think, in relation that I don't think that the sex people are having when they're having it young now is because they want to be having sex. I think it's a pressure thing. I think it's a peer pressure thing. I think it's stuff they've seen on the internet. And it to me, it doesn't feel evolutionary. It doesn't feel like this is a progressive thing that I, as a child or a developing adult, want to do. It's because there's this peer pressure on that I should be doing. Right. And the girls are reacting to that in a particular way, and the boys are reacting to that in a particular way. And actually, when you're hearing the sex, the number of people having sex is plummeting. And I think that's the reason for it. I think everybody's just kind of going, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what this should be about. And I don't think people differentiate sex between lovemaking now either. Yeah. And that was a huge distinction for us.
Really?
Oh yeah, massive.
So when you was, when you was like 14 and you had there was eight of you, 4 couples, was that more of a love thing or was
that was most definitely sex.
Yeah.
The partners we were with though, when we were together, then that was an expression of emotionality. That was most definitely love. Yeah. Right. So there was love making over here, and there was just great sex over there.
And you don't think people differentiate these days?
I don't think they understand what it means, because I think the confusion comes with one is an expression of emotion, the other is an expression of physicality. So you can be absolutely phenomenal in bed just by learning stuff. Just by learning stuff, knowing where things are. Yeah.
That's the key, guys.
I know what happens if I do it. So you can learn something technically and hone it and practice it and be really good at it. But there's no real emotional connection to that. I mean, I've been in bed with some women who've had orgasms and they've never had orgasm before, and then do, oh my God, you must love me, and I'm like, ooh, no.
No, just know what you're doing.
If you do this, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, this is just technique. There's nothing emotional. In it.
Yeah.
But there isn't that dividing line. You know, you when you make love to somebody, the sex can be terrible, because it's all about the connection through the eyes and touch and just being able to share space. It's a different thing. It's not the same.
That's love making or sex.
Oh, fuck.
Well,
I knew you was gonna ask me that. It depends on what you want, I guess.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to pick. I mean,
I think there's a place for both. You know, I think.
you think there's a place for both in one sort of relation?
Well, yeah, I think you can do. I think it's tougher. I do think it's tougher because I think if you find somebody that you're emotionally connected to, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be physically compatible, right? And therefore, making love to somebody in that context is easy. Having great sex with them is probably impossible. And that's why a lot of people don't have just one partner. I haven't finished the narrative, have I? So when I turned 30, I saw the aftermath of my cheating. And I said, I'm never doing that again.
What was the
aftermath? Oh, it was incredibly complicated. Okay, so not to use names, but N.A. and K were... N was the woman I bought the house with. A turned out to be the mother of my child, latterly on. And K was the woman that I was... Yeah. And it was K who had children. Considerably older than I was. So I was 21. She was 37. And A was my age, just a little younger. And N was 27. So it was my age, 5 years older. And K had children. And one of them had made a strong connection with me and asked me to be their godfather because they were being the godfather of their sister's child.
Father of their sister's child, okay.
Yeah, but becoming an uncle.
Yeah.
But wanted to be a godfather. But because he hadn't been christened, he asked me to be his godfather. And so when this all ended, she ended up coming down to A's place with a knife. She'd followed me down. It was a cluster.
Oh, no wonder.
Yeah, no wonder.
But it was how emotionally damaging, because normally if you do something like that, you move on, right? You don't see the aftermath. You've just kind of gone on elsewhere. Not that you do it consciously, it's just how but in this thing, because of the son, I had to rebuild the relationship with the mother. And yeah, she was distraught, and I was like, oh, that would never be my intent. But it suddenly dawned on me, actually, that's probably what happens every single time this happens. And I kind of went, can I be monogamous? And I was like, no.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So after the cheating, you was like, oh, I don't want to make anyone feel like this again.
So I from that day forward, I said, I'm never getting into a monogamous relationship. So if I'm in a relationship, it's like, you know, I don't like the term open because it suggests something that it is. But yeah.
Poly. Just poly.
Yeah, I suppose that's what
that's what we call it
these
these
label
days.
now.
Yeah. We're calling it polyamorous these days.
So, I mean, when you discovered that you weren't monogamous, was there like people around you that you knew weren't monogamous?
No. Well, I think...
Or cheating. I mean, cheating is different.
Yeah, I was going to say there were tons of guys in relationships who were cheating on their wives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were a few wives who were cheating on their husbands. But usually when women cheat, it's for emotional reasons. And when men cheat, it's usually for physical reasons. So that it's always worse when a woman cheats than when a guy cheats.
Oh.
No,
I mean...
It just means that usually if a woman's cheating, a guy's usually cheating just to get a physical thing. When a woman cheats, it's usually to get emotional. And if you're having to leave the relationship to get the emotional bit, relationship's
it's not looking good.
That's true. That is true.
So that's what I meant by that. It wasn't kind of a gender split. Well, it is, but it's not in the same way. It's just that we behave very differently in that context.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I knew plenty of people. But no, I mean, most people just accept that they're going to cheat.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I wonder why people just don't accept that they might not be monogamous. I feel like
I don't think
trying to fight,
but I don't think they know that. I don't think because it's not like it's not the norm in society. Like think about our parents and stuff. Like growing up, like they'll definitely like the dads were definitely cheating and stuff. And the mums were they were getting on with it.
Just to make sure I don't find out.
Just make sure I don't find out. Make sure you don't have the woman in your arm going to places where people know me. Do you know? Do it in secret. And they kind of like accepted it in that way. But I don't think it's because they know that there's an alternative. Do you know what I mean?
I think that. I think you're absolutely right. We go back to this idea that your whole purpose in life in the Welsh mining community is to get married and have kids.
Yeah.
Right, that's your entire purpose in life.
Yeah.
No
so in those
reason
communities, there weren't any I don't want to say alternative family structures because I think these days that's kind of normal. So there weren't really like any queer families or
oh god no
any
Probably not. No.
No,
or people were in polyamorous relationship.
We wouldn't have had. I think this is one of the things I find most interesting about sort of 21st century living is a label for everything. So even if there was, we wouldn't have called it.
You wouldn't. That's true.
So it'd just be this is how I live my life.
Yeah, but that's so nice. I think that's so nice. I think labels add different layers to things that don't even need to be there.
And they make it more so very restrictive. I think labels do. If you say you're one thing, you have to be this thing, and there's no fluidity, and you can't come out of this box that you've put yourself in because you've labeled
But it seems that people like to. There seems to be a drive. Let's have 260 different labels.
But you know what? The reason why I think that is because I think they want understanding and acceptance from other people.
See, I have a problem with that. It's like live your own life and not expect anybody to intrude on. I'll back you up 100%. But as soon as you want someone to accept you, it's like no.
Yeah.
There's no obligation for them to accept you.
Yeah, there isn't. There actually isn't. So so what about you with like labeling your sexuality and stuff, anything like that? So I would assume before you didn't label. You just
I still don't. I grew up as me. I made a choice quite early on not to take my foster family surname. It was offered, and I kind of went, no, I like being me. This is unique. This is part of who I am, and there's no other person like me. So I'm going to be the first line in my line now. So my surname is my father's name, but my parents weren't married.
Oh, okay.
So my name should have been Hallett, which is my biological mother's name.
Yeah.
But I have my father's name, and I just kind of went, no, this is who I am. So I had an upbringing that went, you are you, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And that's how I live my life. It was kind of like, I was like, all right. But I don't expect anybody to, go, oh yeah, this is a cool life or anything.
Yeah.
It's just how I live.
Yeah.
People often, you live you.
But I do think that people will look at it and say that is a cool way to live. I think that people will, because a lot of people are just restricted. But I guess everyone chooses to be that way. Because you've chosen to live your life the way you've chosen. So when people are living a life that's very restricted, that maybe they've chosen to live like that.
I would argue most people do. But I think there is now, there's a different way of living that goes, I've got to be in a box.
Yeah.
I grew up in a generation where everybody wanted to be independent, right? So you wanted to look different. You didn't want to conform. You God forbid you wouldn't go to a chain store. It would have been the cardinal sin. People would have beaten you to death. But you wouldn't feel pressured by society. You were brought up and told, I grew up my generation is known for the new romantics. So this was when the guys were wearing makeup and wigs and orchestral maneuvers in the dark, and
this is all types of men, regardless of sexuality.
Yeah, it was a look, which we were saying earlier, kind of span out of David Bowie and
I was thinking of David Bowie.
And so the new romantics were again, like most things, the punks all came from Camden. There were no punks outside of London, right? And there were no new romantics outside of London, but it defined a generation. It defined a look and an ethos for that generation. But it was all about going, I do not want to conform. So we come out of the 1970s punk era and the Sex Pistols and PIL, and where everybody was spitting on each other and just smashing each other in the face and, tear down the Queen and all the rest of it. And then suddenly went into this softer but still kind of, I'm not conforming. You know, I don't want to be in a box. And I feel now everybody wants to be in a box.
Yeah.
I feel like also that might have something to do with like people wanting to find community.
Yeah.
Labeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
But does that label give you a community, or does it just give you a label?
It helps you find your other label, the label that's that's the same as yours, I think. And that's finding community.
Okay.
I think that's what it is.
What do you think community is? What's community to you?
Oh, well, you see, I'm very careful. I orchestrate my life. If people come to my parties and they go, how do you know so many different people?
I believe that.
I can believe that.
And it's like, because I'm interested in human beings.
Yeah.
My son was asking me, actually, he goes, what's so different about, because I always go on about the loss of pub culture and how dramatic that's been to social cohesion. And my son said, oh, what's so different about being in a chat room to being in a pub? You're talking to people. Said, if you found a racist or a misogynist in a chat room, what would you do? Oh, you just block them.
Yeah.
Right. Can't do that in a pub.
Yeah.
So you learn to deal with them.
Yeah.
You had to punch him in the nose or get someone else to punch him in the nose, or learn how to just ignore him, or, you know, but there was cross-generational speech in a pub, which you don't get now. So you kind of, so when you talk about community, to me, it sounds like your group's getting smaller, smaller. And actually, I'm genuinely interested in everybody, but you've got to be interested.
Yeah.
Right. I'm really, really bad with dull people.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't do small talk.
Yeah.
One of my friends sort of said, we were at a networking event, and he goes, you've kind of just walked past about 10 people going, hello.
They're boring.
Just, oh, look at my dog.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's not what you want to know about. Yeah.
I like that, but I do like that you're interested in people and you know so many different people, different backgrounds. But then there's obviously going to be differences or things that are conflicting, like thoughts and feelings just about the world and everything. How do you deal with that? Because obviously there's going to be some conflict.
You know, I don't think there has to be conflict. Just because you think differently about, you know, your experiences and your life experience is going to be different to mine, and where your conclusions land based on that are going to be different to mine. So no, I don't think there has to be conflict. I mean, it's like politics, you know. I mean, people don't know much about politics in the 21st century. It's like,
that's true.
Who'd blame them, right?
I don't know shit about politics. Yeah,
everything's crap. So it's like,
yeah.
But, you know, I grew up in a mining community, right? We lived and breathed politics. You know, it was miners' strike and the unions, and it was impossible. You know, Thatcher. I mean, when Margaret Thatcher got into power, I was 10 years old, and we were all going, we're all going to die. We're all going to die because she's a woman and she's going to be cleaning, and there's a nuclear button there, and there's a woman. Right. It's like, you know, that's the world I grew up in. But I think as long as you're not trying to force your ideas on somebody. That's the problem I always have.
That's where I was coming from, because if it's somebody that's not just has an opposing idea or thought, it's somebody who's got a bit of hate, you know.
Oh, well, they'd be a twat. I wouldn't spend any time with them.
Yeah.
they'd be gone insane. I mean, they wouldn't be in the circle.
Yeah.
You know, if you think and behave like that, you'd feel so uncomfortable amongst my friends. You'd be gone in seconds. You know. It's like, I don't like nignogs. I don't like gay people. I don't like.
Yeah.
You're like going, well, here's the gay nignog. You know. But to me, those kind of people tend to be very lonely, very isolated, very myopic. Usually, you know, they're the people that have got like 2 friends, you know. They've now got 1,000 friends on Twitter.
Yeah. I was going to say, those are the people that translate online to be, what do they call them again? Incels.
Oh yeah.
People that those are the people, they're online
spewing hate.
Spewing hate behind people.
But you know, these were the guys that were sat in the pub corner going, oh, bloody hate you. Go back to where you came from. And actually, the majority of the people in the pub will go, shut up, John. Don't be a dick. And John is sitting.
But I feel, obviously, that has a greiter weight than online, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's the point, isn't it? It's like, online's not real.
No.
You know, and I think we've made it real. You know, the news covers, you know, what's happened on social media. Social media. It's just a bunch of people spewing crap, most of which don't actually exist. They're bots.
They're bots, yeah.
Yeah, we've been saying Twitter's a cesspit.
Yeah, we've come off Twitter. We can't do it anymore.
Deactivated.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I might reactivate.
Mine's gone.
Might be gone by now, actually.
Mine's completely gone. I'm so happy with that.
Gone by now.
Yeah. Are you on Twitter?
I am. Like most things, I was one of the first people on it. we remembered, we were going, why is it only 140 characters?
Oh, now it's like, how many now?
280.
Yeah, and if you can press to read them all.
Yeah, you can add more into your add threads and all of that.
So obviously it started because it was an SMS, which is 140 characters.
I remember when I first got Twitter, it was just to follow celebrities.
I was on there when no celebrities didn't know it was there.
It was one of the first.
Yeah, I remember it just used to follow, and some of them actually used to follow me back.
Yeah, because I was in the first,
Yeah.
But it's really funny. I got most of my TV through Facebook to begin with, and then most of my TV through Twitter. Because I'd end up in debates with people, and there'd be a researcher checking, oh, you've got an interesting view on this. Can you come and do our show? And
Oh,
that is really good. So in terms of like how you identify as well. So now you wouldn't put a label on it. You wouldn't.
If somebody asked me what I am, I'd say I'm straight. If somebody asked me to, I'm always blacker there if I've got to tick something on a research box. But in real life, no. My name's Paul Atherton. Use my name. I don't care what pronoun you use. Because if you start using your pronouns to me at my face, we're gonna have a problem. It's like, and whatever you call me to other people, I really don't care.
Yeah, I think that's really good because I think people are easily offended these days. And again, we always say you have to look at the intention of what people are saying, and if intention is pure, you should give a little bit of grace and not be so easily offended. Because we just are living in a world now where there's so many labels every single day. There's something new every single day, and so we're always learning every single day. But if we could just live and just be,
that would be great.
How good
and also with what you said, like it's there's context and there's nuance as well. So I think when we don't choose labels, or we might, there's a reason for that. There's context, there's nuance, and I think people should give grace to that as well.
Yeah. I don't really care about pronouns. I don't care if you call me whatever you want to call me.
Yeah. No, it's like, my name identifies me. That's but I want to be accepted for who I am. I don't want to construct something that somebody has to comply with. It's just like this is me, like me or hate me.
Yeah,
and I like that, and I think that's a good way to live.
Yeah, I feel like you were ahead of what's that?
The curve.
Ahead of the curve. Yeah.
But I think it comes back to your circumstances and your environment, right? I was in a lot of ways I was incredibly lucky that a bunch of gay guys kind of brought me up in a world that I could have easily passed me by.
So how long were you in that kind of circle?
About 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So early pub days before I met the woman that I bought the house with.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so you just had a good time and then you settled down and bought the house.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. It was more. Again, this is why the world is so different. I mean, 1980s we got rid of rent caps. So you couldn't charge what you wanted to charge for rent. They were controlled by the government.
Yeah.
And so it was cheaper to buy than it was to rent. So
yeah.
So it wasn't a kind of an aspirational thing. It was just
it was just cheaper.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was the case now. Oh my gosh.
Never been true in London, by the way.
Oh.
Okay. The places I rented were worth millions. It's just that they'd been bought in the 1980s and people because it was all south of the river. Right? So I lived on the river. So when I first moved to London, I lived by Tower Bridge, then Vauxhall, then Waterloo. And then, we couldn't believe it because we were seeing flats in, say, Peckham for the same money as we could pay to live on the river.
That's crazy. When did you move to London?
Well, it depends how you count London. I zone 1 in 2000.
Yeah.
But I moved here in 97. But I lived in Greenford and Hillingdon and then for a bit.
I mean, it's London, but
I don't know, man. Like it's like Uxbridge.
Just about.
8 centimeters.
Just about.
You wouldn't have got a London telephone number.
No, you wouldn't actually.
No. I even in Hillingdon, I had to insist on one because I was like, I'm not having a bloody London telephone number.
What was it? It was 0171, 0181 then.
I think we just moved to the 020s.
Oh, just the 020. Oh yeah, no, it would have been the 020.
Yeah, I had the 0208 number.
I paid for an 0207 even though we were
Do you have a landline to use it? No. See, you don't use.
I don't.
So if you need to do like,
I don't have a house. How can I have a landline?
It's true. It's true. So, oh yeah, that's true. Oh, do you know what? You remind me of my uncle. You really remind me of my uncle. Like it's a good thing. He just likes to live off the grid.
Well,
but I feel like you're more on the grid than he is,
but yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a tech background, so I launched the first online video. One of my clients was a company called Iterated Systems that created the fractal technology, the mathematics behind the first video that was sent. I was working with Pegasus Software, first online banking. So everything I was doing.
Oh, I've heard of Pegasus. Yeah.
with Barclays Bank, created the first online banking. So I mean, it was kind of I grew up in that world. I was one of the first people on the internet, Tim Berners-Lee's HTML. It was a cool space to be in, and then we just watched it get more and more and more corrupted. And then Google came, which we liked to begin with, and then turned into this monolith. And then social media came, and you were like going, well, there's no point being here now.
Yeah.
This is just a conduit to get you to buy crap.
Yeah, I mean,
consumerism. You can't.
But
I like how you've kind of like, because I think it's so hard to kind of like avoid consumerism. I think you do it as much as you can and to a good degree, but I think it's so hard to avoid it.
Well, I think it depends what you want out of life, right? It's. I don't buy things. I live in central London. So, for me, my life is about experiences. I try and do 3 new things every day in London. Right?
Every day?
Every day.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes something as little as going into a different coffee shop or finding a blue plaque I haven't seen before, or sometimes just a new exhibition, or sometimes I went to visit the Wimbledon windmill. I'd never been there, and then discovered that the Scouting for Boys was created up there because Baden Powell did the writing next door, and and milled some flour. Milled some flour, which was very exciting. But we're a ridiculous city for free stuff. You kind of go to New York or Amsterdam, and every museum you're paying 20 odd quid for. We've got 137 museums that are all free of charge, and they're the greatest establishments in the world.
I feel like as Londoners as well, we just don't take advantage of a lot of these things, especially because we were born in this area, Wood and Hackney and stuff.
Yeah,
and. Yeah, I think we just overlook a lot of things.
Kind of busy in the
There's some things we just haven't been to. And it's like I have some family that come from Ghana, and they'll go to all these places in London, and they'll be like, "Have you been? I've never been
there.
Yeah, never been there. Yeah,
I've never
Shame.
been. Yeah, it's actually terrible. Like, it's even the panel that we did the other day, like, even that was really good. In what world would you be sitting next to? I don't know if she's like an ex-royal or she's still royal.
She's still a royal. Yeah,
like
still a
in what world would that be a thing?
That's why I love London. When I first came here, my friends used to say, "Oh, you must feel like," because I was a big fish in a small pond when I was in the valley. Not least because I used to host these incredible parties.
Not because of that.
No, it was really funny. My friend's parents goes, "Oh, my daughter can't come to. I know what goes on there." No, you don't.
What did they assume went on?
Well, they alcohol and drugs.
Oh, okay,
as opposed to alcohol, drugs, and sex.
Yeah. They missed that part out.
I always used to annoy me when my mother would come home and she goes, "You've had a party."
Yeah.
I'm like, how the hell does she know?
Yeah.
And of course, what we'd done is we'd made the place spotless.
Yeah.
That's why you clean up after too clean.
Yeah.
You did it way too good.
Yeah.
Air freshener.
Oh, bless. But we have come to the end of our time.
Oh, what a shame.
It goes really quickly. That's going really quickly. We come to it. But let our listeners know, like, what you're going to be up to next and how to find you on social media.
Okay, so on my social media, on Twitter, I'm at London is London, and on Instagram, London is London. Where I post all the kind of stuff I do on a daily basis. So if you're interested in finding out what you should go do, just track down through 365 days, and you can do something new every day. I can guarantee most of the things you'll never done. I'm currently in discussions with Faber and Faber about a publishing deal on my memoir.
Nice.
Yeah.
That needs to be a thing.
So that's kind of the big thing at the moment. I'm hoping to do an exhibition with Tate later on, which is a follow-up exhibition to one I did at the gallery at Oxo called Paul Atherton's Greatest Londoners. But this one's called Black Female Talent, because I'm kind of going through another phase of, I want to remind people how great everything is, because there's a lot of focus on how bad everything is,
right,
which I don't necessarily think is a good thing.
Yeah.
You kind of go, you need the balance. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Here are 10 women I've met, I know, or are friends with, from Floella Benjamin to Nicola Adams to AJ Adodu. You know, it's and they're just photographs of me and them, and then there's a narrative board that kind of explains how we met, what happened, and why they were influenced.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I'm doing that. I'm hoping to kickstart my film again. We screened that back last year at the Genesis. Called 90 Days of Hope, Why Britain Chose Not to End Homelessness, which is about everyone in. And my play 50 Years of Trying, which actually got forced to close on the 16th of March 2020 when Boris Johnson decided to close all the theatres. And then on the 20th of March, which is my birthday, he decided to close all the pubs.
Damn, that wasn't good.
But yeah, so that's kind of, so yeah, film world, theatre world, writing. I'm an emerging writer at the London Library. I'm just judging the latest intake, which has been an interesting one.
Amazing.
But that's about it.
Yeah,
That's about it.
A man of many trades.
Yeah, and talent.
What star sign are you before we leave?
Pisces Aries cusp.
Yeah, you're in cusp. Okay. Yeah.
The romantic businessman.
Yeah.
I get on
It's
with
making
Pisces.
sense.
Yeah.
It's making sense. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure you use the hashtag Tutu's Podcast and Conversation on Twitter. Make sure you rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, subscribe, YouTube, all that good stuff. See you next week.
Peace.